one of the things I'd love to ask you about, of course, Erik, the last time I heard you on another show was at the WATP live show while poor Carl was having a nervous breakdown live on stage.
I gotta give Carl credit. He was not having a nervous breakdown. The people with him were having nervous breakdowns, like producer Chris and them. But he was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna figure out the laptop and we're gonna do this. And he had other stuff going on while he was working on that. He was pretty level-headed trying to get it all ready. He did not have a breakdown. Everyone else did.
Well, the person who I'd love to ask you about, though, that has had quite the breakdown, especially in the last 48 hours, Stuttering John, ye old donning his gay apparel for Christmas, as they say. I'd love to know what your take is on that, because ever since like the O&A days,
what happened in the last 48 hours with John?
Oh, we'll get to it.
Okay,
but all the way like through like the O&A days, you were sort of. Not as I wouldn't say you were shitster at all, but you were like very sort of laid back and let's chill out and let's see what the full issue is and before we take sides. But with Stuttering John, it's impossible not to be against him. Like,
it's weird how polarizing he became. It's weird. I want to say not by his own doing, but it is by his own doing, but not amplified by him. It's his own doing as told by other people. And then you go, well, I'm hearing this second, third, fourth hand, and I don't even want to hear the original source. I don't like that guy. And it just blew, like he became his own industry. He blew up into his own little sub niche of podcasting, broadcasting, John. Like you go and you put your podcast on the iTunes charts. You're like, oh, let's see. I'm at least in the top 100 for entertainment. I'm in the top 30 for comedy for this. Oh, where am I in the Stuttering John? Oh, I'm number 4 in the Stuttering John. This is fantastic.
You could fill out a whole 100 chart with the Stuttering John shows now.
Right. It's like, man, you don't know how much I'm making off Patreon and all this stuff just from talking about Stuttering John. But to be fair, there's only two. You got to give credit to Carl at WATP. He's the one who figured out that this was a subject to even be focused on, because I think he said because Opie got boring, so he found Stuttering John. And then Uncle Rico's show with Shuli and Bob work because they're comics. They know how to do all this stuff from years of being on Howard and everything, and their personal interactions with John. So that show makes sense. Everyone else who's doing John stuff is fine. It's commentary, I guess, but it's not the levels of what Carl and Shuli and Bob Levy are all doing with it.
But it seems that in the last 48 hours, Stuttering John has announced that he is retiring his show.
Oh.
And that he's stepping down from the whole sort of podcasting world, comedy world. And fuck knows what he's going to end up doing. But with you, Erik, what's your reaction to that? And do you have any stories of any personal interactions with the hilarious king of comedy himself?
When did he say that?
Apparently in the last couple of hours, like the Steel Toe.
Aaron's show, yeah.
Yeah. They played the clip on their show. And to be honest, like with Stuttering John, all joking aside, I seriously think he needs a genuine doctor. I think that he's drank so much that he's caused legitimate internal damage.
He's starting to look like you.
Yeah. He looks so fucking unhealthy that it's actually not funny.
They on with Shuli and Bob and Mike Morse, they showed a comparison. They watched a clip of him doing something, and I think it was during the middle of the pandemic, so like late 2020, early 2021. And they showed him a video clip of him there, and then had a side by side with, one of his disastrous still frames that they love to pull. And you see how terrible he aged in 2 years. When it's not just like, some people look young for a long time and then that switch hits and then they start looking their age. You can tell like he's got weird liver spots. His hair is thinning. Like he's one of those guys now that is slicking their hair back and you can see how thin it is. And he's got, as Bob was calling it, stigmata in his hands. And they figured out it's holes in his hand from constantly opening beer bottles. And he just, is falling apart because he's sitting there not doing anything except drinking. And I feel bad for the guy. I mean, I don't want to help him, but I feel bad for the guy. That this is what he's become. I feel bad for his family and all of that. I found some stuff on John that I let Shuli know that really could be very entertaining. About I'll give you a real brief version of it. There's some money that is unclaimed by John. And by looking at some of the laws in California, his wife could just claim it because of the money he owes. That would be considered income. So she could go and claim this money from different situations that he used to have, file for that, and then claim thousands of dollars that he would not get.
Fucking hell.
If anything could get worse for the poor guy, now
I know,
Susanna
right?
is going to come and get the money.
And I know somebody else, when we were looking at this, told John directly through DM. It's like, hey, I got mad at that guy for telling John that this thing existed, but he felt even worse than I did. So he told that person, and he said, hey, look, here's a link. There's some stuff that you could claim. And he goes, yeah, okay, thanks. That's what he responded. And I said, all right, don't feel bad anymore on that aspect. I would love to see that information get out. I gave it all to Shuli, so it's up to them what they do with it. But if that surfaced, just to see all this money go rightfully to where it's supposed to go, and then John having to scream about that, would be hilarious too.
Let me ask E-Rock a question. Hey, E-Rock, what do you think about the fact that like that Howard Stern world, right? He seems like he has never disconnected from it, because when you're in that beast and when you're in that system, you think you're untouchable. And it just seems like John's never let go that it's not 1995 anymore. And he can't, like, he's not in New York City. He's not going to concerts. He's not going to strip clubs. He's not going to all these things with the crew. You think that he's having a hard time still, like, disconnecting from that world?
It's only because he has absolutely nothing going, I imagine when he went to the Tonight Show, he still would talk to the writers and stuff. It's like, yeah, when we did this on the Stern Show, whatever. But you got to understand, even for that time, Howard's, his own entity. But for that time, Howard was pretty huge. But Leno was way bigger, and TV and network and Hollywood is way bigger than what Howard was at that time. So you're coming from here, which is above everything else, but you're going up to here, and you're like, oh, we did over there. They don't care about the past stuff. They're like, what are you doing now? What are you doing for us now? So when he goes on to his podcast currently and he's talking about Howard stuff, he doesn't have a lot. He brings up stuff once in a while about the Tonight Show, but he doesn't have a lot of stories to talk about the Tonight Show. So he goes back to the time where he thinks because the fans want it, but it was the time, I guess, he was actually happy.
Yeah,
he hasn't progressed into anything else. Like, it's like talking about high school all the time, which is why Carl always did the Glory Days drop whenever he would talk about the Howard Stern stuff. It's people now who still act like they were their persona in high school, like they were the big deal, or they always talk about high school. And you go, dude, you're in your late 40s. Why are you talking about high school? Reminiscing once in a while with a friend from high school is fine. But when you're putting that out there all the time as like, this is an accomplishment of my life, it's really sad. And he hasn't done anything since. Well, actually, that's not true. He got fired from the Stephanie Miller Show. So he did that and then had these other little things that he said he did, but I don't see any evidence of that. It's a case of, if you ever watched a movie or read a story or something, you go, what if they just didn't follow the story outline for a movie? And they go, what if his life just got worse and worse? What if this never happened? Because they have movies like, well, this instant didn't happen in his life, so he didn't really become the success that he wanted. But, they always try to resolve it some way at the end of a movie. It's like, what if it just, he peaked in high school, then he peaked early on in his career, and then it just slammed down like the stock market, and then it just kept getting worse until his ending days. That's what this story is. Somebody wrote the really terrible alternate ending, and this is what he's going with. And it's just sad. He
basically is the real life version of Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai. And the thing about Stuttering John,
Johnny had redeeming qualities though.
Eventually, after Creech
even
broke his arm.
When was the movie when was it the second one, I guess, where remember Mr. Miyagi got Kreese in a headlock in the parking lot where they were fighting. He was fighting him, kicked the shit out of him because he saw him roughing up Johnny. And that, led to where we are now with the TV series. But you could see Johnny was the cliche product of that times because had a terrible father, or the father was gone. And then this guy was his father figure, and this guy was sort of abusive to him. So that's why he was like that. There's redeeming qualities to Johnny's story. I don't see any redeeming qualities to John's story. And Levy pointed this out. If he cleaned himself up, came back out there and said, look, I'm willing to, analyze the stuff that I did. If he went on there with them to goof on it and was trying to make him, people would forgive him. People would there's people that used to be friends with John from all these properties that are reporting on it that don't want to deal with him anymore because they think he's an asshole. But people like a redemption story. If he did change his ways and cleaned up and then came back out and accepted it and then went to move on, people would be okay with it. He's just not there. Or maybe he is. The fact that he stopped doing a show, maybe this is he's taking it to heart finally, or somebody got in his ear and said, John, you're killing yourself. You need to stop this.
Did you ever have any personal interactions with him when he was at Compound?
I had interactions with him outside of Compound too. Yeah, there was a couple times at Compound. There was a couple times at Sirius. He came up and did when it was Opie and Jimmy at the time. I remember one time we had him on with Dave Attell, and I put that up on YouTube if you want to go check it out on Foundry Archives on YouTube. There's every time John starts getting into his dig me kind of vibe, and then Attell would just throw a little dry quip out there to deflate everything that John was trying to say. It's hilarious. You should listen to it. And then I ran into John somewhere in the 2000s at another radio thing. I'm trying to remember. John's nice. He'll say hi, he shake your hand stuff. But then John doesn't understand why it's not everybody. Like John walks into the room and everyone's not in a circle around John. That's the delusion that he has. It's like, why am I not the center of attention? Why am I? And as you can see by all the evidence out there, he can't take a joke either. O&A was like, I don't know if you watched much O&A, Chad, but it was the ball busting.
Don't get me started. I was there with you, Erock.
Okay. It's the ball busting platform for comedians and pretty much paved the way for how comics do podcasts now and a lot of other things.
Absolutely.
But it was a lion's den. You get in there and it's like, you got to fight. You got to figure out a way to survive in this thing. And you see by evidence of John being on shows with other comics or other places, the second a ribbing is taking place, why are you coming after me? What did I do? You can't act like that. And be in this world and say you're a comedian and you don't have a comedy set and you don't know how to be a comedian around other comedians.
Yeah, that's what I said last time I was on. When I did the phones when I worked at Stern, he called and he was a dick and he was gone by that point. He had left to go to the Tonight Show. He was just an asshole and you could never root for the guy because you knew he was a dick and an asshole and nobody liked him. Yeah. That's why I can't understand why he still carries that arrogance. Now, I have to say, and I know everybody's going to cry, I have to go here in 2 minutes, Hughezy. So I just want to get this one story out to E-Rock. When I worked at Howard, I was supposed to sign an NDA, okay? Because I was not supposed to reveal anything I saw while I worked in his production studio.
Right.
I was in his home, building. It was in the apartment building he had. So I had the bright idea of emailing the Opie and Anthony show, the show that got me into wanting to get into broadcasting to begin with, and say, hey, I got this NDA. I don't want to sign it. I want to come across town. I want to join the O&A world. Would you guys like to talk to me? And I got crickets, and it broke my heart. So
I never knew that.
Yeah, that was.
It wasn't me that you interacted with then, but I had no idea that you even had that.
I was ready. I had all the secrets right at the tip of my tongue.
That's probably good that you didn't, because not just with Howard, but that would have really burnt the bridge for you in the industry at all.
Oh, I'm sure it would have, but it would have been more E-Rock. It would have been worth it at the time.
It would have been more entertaining. But then somebody gave us footage of his daughter on a off-Broadway show, and saw them in a hospital one time. And, there was plenty of people feeding us stuff. And some of the stuff that we got, we're just like, yeah, we're not touching that. But then other stuff, we would goof on about about whatever else was going on. And look, I grew up listening to Howard. I was a Howard fan I couldn't listen to Howard until I was a certain age because, your mom's around, so she wouldn't let me listen to it. But I started listening in the early 90s to Howard, and up until the point when, we were working against him and stuff, I just didn't have the time. I would try to catch an afternoon replay or something like that. But my big contribution was the time for a very short window. Howard did live reads for XM satellite radio on his terrestrial syndication show.
Yeah.
And it seems like I was the only one who had the air check of that. So I brought those clips when we started at XM. He would play it, and Howard goes, "It's not AM, it's not FM, it's XM satellite radio." And we would play that all the time. And then we got from Buchwald's office, we got a cease and desist on that to stop playing that. I'm like, really? A live read? So we wound up stopping. But there was material that would come in, and we're just like, yeah, we don't need to mess with, his personal life and all that stuff, nor would we want to. But if it was radio stuff, of course. I have stacks over there somewhere. Somebody sent me contracts that Chom Chiasano negotiated and stuff for their live Vegas shows and Atlantic City shows and all, just the ridiculous rider and all the specifics and all that stuff. We had it. I don't know why we never went on the air with it, but I have it over there. Maybe one day I'll put all that stuff out to see the riders and the requirements and the ridiculous level of what was required for people up here to what was required for people down here.
Well, on the last day of K-Rock, when they did the march over to the Sirius building and the little O&A army started to show up, I was like, fuck them, I'm with you guys. Come on, take me back.
Yeah, they followed when he got on that bus to go around Midtown to go down to the Hard Rock for the Sirius press conference.
Yep.
They were because it was in traffic. They couldn't get down. Where were they going down? They were going down. I think they were going down 57th around.
57th. Yeah.
So they kept hitting traffic wherever they went, and the crowd, the O&A crowd that was out there, kept catching up. So they had somebody on the top part of the bus. I don't know if it was Access Hollywood or Entertainment Tonight or something that was following the bus ride, but they had to keep shooting you're on the top level of a bus and you're doing a crouch shot to shoot up at them, because if you look down, you're seeing big black and yellow signs for all this stuff. And they managed to follow the bus all the way down to the Hard Rock. I was in the studio, so I wasn't down there to get to see it, but I saw the footage from it.